You are standing in the middle of a conversation that is spinning completely out of control. Your heart is pounding, your thoughts are racing, and every single second that passes, you feel yourself getting closer and closer to saying something you cannot take back. You know that feeling. That tight chest, that heat rising up your neck, that voice in your head screaming at you to just let it out. And what happens next changes everything, every single time. Here is what nobody tells you about high-pressure conflict. It is not about who is right. It is never about who is right. It is about who stays in control of themselves long enough to actually get what they need from the situation. And most people never learn this. Most people go their entire lives reacting instead of responding, exploding instead of expanding, and then spending days, sometimes weeks, picking up the pieces from a moment that lasted 30 seconds. Think about the last time a conflict got out of hand. Not just an argument. A real, escalating, gut-wrenching confrontation where you felt completely cornered. Maybe it was with someone you work with, someone you live with, or someone you deeply love. And in that moment, something shifted inside you. Something primal took over. And afterward, you sat alone, heart still racing, replaying everything you said, everything they said, wondering how it got that bad that fast. That replay, that regret, that exhaustion after the storm. That is the real cost of not knowing how to handle high-pressure conflict. And it is not just emotional. Research consistently shows that people who struggle with conflict regulation experience significantly higher stress hormone levels, sleep disruption, and relationship deterioration over time. We are talking about real, measurable damage to your health, your relationships, and your career. This is not a soft skill problem. This is a life quality problem. Now, before we go deeper, if you already feel like you have tried everything and nothing works, there is a program linked in the description below this video. It is not for everyone. Honestly, if you think you already have this handled, you probably do not need it. But if some part of you knows that conflict is quietly costing you more than you want to admit, you might want to check it out sooner rather than later, because the window to get in is not always open. Go ahead and keep watching first though, because what you are about to learn right now is going to start shifting things immediately. Let us talk about what actually happens in your brain during high-pressure conflict, and why staying calm feels almost physically impossible in those moments. When someone challenges you, criticizes you, raises their voice at you, or backs you into a corner, your brain does something that evolution designed for survival, not for modern relationships. It floods your system with stress hormones. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, empathy, and measured decision-making, essentially goes offline, and the part of your brain wired for fight or flight takes over completely. This is why smart, thoughtful, kind people say incredibly destructive things in arguments. It is not because they are bad people. It is because their brain is running a survival program in a situation that actually requires wisdom. And here is the devastating part. The moment you lose emotional control in a conflict, you also lose credibility. The other person stops hearing your point. They start defending against your energy. And now the original issue is buried under a landslide of new damage that did not exist 5 minutes ago. So what do you do instead? Let us break this down in a way that actually makes sense in real life, not in a textbook. The first thing you have to understand is that your body knows before your mind does, before you raise your voice, before you say the thing you will regret. There is a physical signal, a tension in your jaw, a tightness in your stomach, a sudden urge to either run or attack. That signal is your early warning system, and most people completely ignore it because they are too focused on what the other person is doing wrong. Here is the shift. The moment you feel that signal, your entire job is to slow down the internal experience, not the external conversation. You are not shutting down. You are not backing away. You are creating a half-second pause between stimulus and response. And inside that half-second, you get to choose. Most people never realize that choice exists. They go straight from trigger to reaction like a reflex. But the people who navigate conflict with skill and composure, they have trained themselves to live inside that pause. That pause is where your power lives. Researchers who study elite negotiators, crisis mediators, and high-stakes diplomats all point to the same pattern. The most effective communicators under pressure are not the ones with the most clever things to say. They are the ones who create deliberate space before they respond. And in that space, something remarkable happens. The emotional intensity drops, clarity returns, and they are able to say exactly what needs to be said with precision instead of panic. Now here is something most people do not realize about the other person in a conflict. When someone escalates, when they get louder, more aggressive, more emotional, they are almost never doing it because they want to destroy you. They are doing it because they feel unheard. They feel dismissed. They feel like they have no other tool available to make you understand what they are experiencing. And when you match their energy, when you escalate back, you just confirmed for them that they were right to escalate. You gave them proof that the only way to get through to you is to push harder. But when you stay regulated, when you stay calm, when you respond instead of react, something almost magical happens in the room. The other person's nervous system starts to sync with yours. This is not a metaphor, this is neurological fact. Humans are wired to mirror each other's emotional states. It is called co-regulation. And when you become the calm in the storm, you are literally pulling the other person toward your state, not theirs. This is why the person who stays emotionally controlled in a conflict is not the weakest person in the room. They are the most powerful person in the room. Every single time, without exception. Now let us talk about language, because the words you choose in a high-pressure moment are either going to open the conversation or slam it completely shut. There is a pattern that almost everyone falls into under pressure. It is called the blame loop. It sounds like this in your head. You always do this, you never listen, you do not care. You are making this so much harder than it needs to be. Every single one of those statements is about the other person, and every single one of them will immediately trigger defensiveness. Because the moment someone feels accused, their brain does exactly what yours does. It shuts down reason and prepares for war. You have not moved the conflict forward. You have just added fuel to a fire that was already out of control. The shift is subtle but transformative. Move from describing what they are doing to describing what you are experiencing. Not what they are doing wrong. What you are feeling, what you need, what matters to you. Not as a manipulation tactic, as a genuine act of vulnerability in a high-stakes moment. And that vulnerability takes extraordinary courage, but the results are extraordinary too. People who have learned to navigate conflict this way report dramatic shifts in their relationships, not just in how arguments end, in how arguments start, in whether arguments happen at all. Because when you have built the reputation as someone who stays grounded under pressure, people start coming to you differently. They soften before they even open their mouths. They know that you are not going to escalate, and that safety changes everything about how communication happens between you. Think about what that would feel like. To walk into a difficult conversation without dread. To know that no matter how intense things get, you have the tools to stay inside yourself, to stay clear, to stay effective. To watch conflict transform from something that drains you for days into something that actually deepens understanding and connection. That is not a fantasy. That is what happens when you actually build this skill systematically. Because here is what separates people who read about conflict resolution from people who actually transform how they show up in conflict. It is not knowledge. Knowledge is not enough. You already know you should not yell. You already know you should breathe. You already know the argument is making things worse. You know these things in the calm. But in the fire of the moment, knowledge alone disappears. What you need is a trained response, a practice pattern, a skill that has been built through repetition until it becomes automatic. This is exactly what the elite performers in relationships, leadership, and high-stakes environments understand. They do not just read about staying calm. They practice it. They build it. They install it at a level that functions even when everything inside them wants to explode. And over time, they become someone who others describe as unshakable. Not cold, not robotic. Unshakable, present, trusted, effective. And the cost of not building this skill is something you already know. You have already paid it. The relationship that got damaged by one conversation that went too far. The opportunity you lost because a tense moment was handled badly. The night you could not sleep because the words you said or heard were still echoing. The version of yourself you saw in those moments that you are not proud of. That cost is real, and it keeps compounding every time the next conflict arrives without you being ready for it. Here is the truth. Most people will watch this, feel deeply connected to everything said here, and then walk away and wait until the next conflict blindsides them before doing anything about it. And when that happens, they will be right back in that moment. Heart pounding, thoughts racing, saying things they wish they could unsay. But you are still here, and that means something important about you. It means you are someone who actually wants to change this. Not just understand it, change it. And that is exactly who the program linked in the description below was built for. Not for people who are casually curious, for people who are genuinely ready to stop letting conflict cost them so much, and start showing up with the kind of emotional mastery that changes how every relationship in their life functions. This is the tool that bridges the gap between knowing and actually being different in the hardest moments. The link is in the description. Do not wait for the next conflict to show you that you needed this. Go now.